Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding a Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel, and in Yirtzeh Hashem today we will be learning Daf Tzadikei Amid Beis. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We pick up today 3 lines off the bottom of Tzadikei Amid Aleph, Siman Shin Hey Sif Zayin. Our learning should be a schus for Achenu Kabeis Yisrael Anesudim Batzaro Bashivya Haim de Bein Bayamu Bein Bayabasha Hamakay Yerachem Aleihem. Our learning should also be a schus refuah shalema for Moshe Meir ben Esther Fradel, Tzvi ben Leah Miriam, Chava Hadassah bas Rezel Serel, Dvar bas Shoshabina, Rivka bas Shira Leah, and Yitzchak ben Tzion ben Dusha. They should have a refuah shalema b'sai shar cheli Yisrael. Our learning should also be a schus. The Rebbeinu Shalom should watch over all of our brothers and sisters who find themselves in harm's way. B'chol makom shehem. So here in Siman Shin Hey, we're continuing to discuss the shaila of Bameh behema yotzes b'Shabbos. What is an animal allowed to go out to Rishus Harabim with wearing? What is an animal allowed to go out to Rishus Harabim with on the guf of the behema? Again, we have a chiyuv of shvisas behemtai. We have to prevent our animals from doing malacha on Shabbos. If the animal goes out and the animal is wearing something on its guf, there's a question of what is that? Is that something that constitutes a beged or a takshit for the behema, or is it something which is a masui? If it's a masui, if it's a burden, then the animal is performing the malacha of haitzah. So let's pick up here with Sif Zayin. Says the Mechaber, Chamor, a donkey, Yotzei b'merdas, is allowed to go out with a saddle cloth. Says the Ramah here in the parentheses, Pirush, what's a saddle cloth? Kemin ukaf katan. Now, the Mishnah Berurah is going to tell us that this word katan really should be gadol. So it's kemin ukaf gadol. It's like an overly large saddle. Shemanichid al hachamor kol hayom kulai, that you leave on the chamor all day long, and its purpose is kidei sheyischamim. It's in order to keep the donkey warm. What we're going to see is that the donkey by nature is a cold animal. And even during the summer months, the donkey's nature is to be cold. Therefore, they had this kind of saddle cloth, I don't know if it was some kind of blanket or something, that they would drape over the donkey, and they would leave it there all the time, whether somebody was riding the donkey or not, in order to keep the donkey warm. Therefore, since the purpose of this saddle cloth is to keep the animal warm, we look at it as a beged for the animal. It's not a masui, and therefore the animal would be allowed to go out into Rishus Harabim bearing this saddle cloth, and it wouldn't be an issue. You don't, as the owner, you're not mechuyev to take it off. But the Macabre puts over here a caveat. For who? Shetei keshur loy bei erev Shabbos. However, this is only true if the merdas was already on the animal on erev Shabbos. You can't put it on the animal on Shabbos and allow the animal to go out to Rishus Harabim with the merdas on it. If the merdas was already on the animal on erev Shabbos, then you could allow the behema, the chamor, to go out to Rishus Harabim on Shabbos with it on. But if the merdas was not on erev Shabbos, if you put the merdas on Shabbos, then the animal cannot go out to Rishus Harabim with the merdas on Shabbos. And let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah, and we'll see why. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Kat Chafei, Chamor yotzei b'merdas, a donkey is allowed to go out with a saddle cloth. Explains the Mishnah Berurah why. The mitzar batzina, because the chamor would have tsar, it would suffer from the cold. The chamora afilu b'tukufas tamas krirale, because the nature of a donkey is that even during the summer season it is cold. V'nechshav kamalbush, and therefore the merdas is considered a malbush, it's considered a beged for the chamor. V'dafka kishikeshura me erev Shabbos, however, like the Mechaber said, this is only true if the merdas was already on the chamor from erev Shabbos. Why? Because in that case, then, if the merdas was on from erev Shabbos, goli daitoi me esmael shetzricha lekach, then the owner of the chamor already was megale. He already revealed that the chamor requires the merdas. That's why the merdas was already on Erev Shabbos. Obviously, this donkey needs a merdas to keep it warm. Avalim kisharoi b'Shabbos. But if the merdas was not on the chamor when Shabbos came in, now on Shabbos you want to take a merdas, put it on the chamor, and allow the chamor to go out to Rishus Harabim, well, now it's very hard to say that the chamor needs the merdas. If the chamor needed the merdas, why wasn't the merdas on already before Shabbos? Elamai, the chamor does not really need the merdas. So why are you putting the merdas on the chamor now? You want to transport it in Rishus Harabim. That you're not allowed to do. Avlim kishare b'Shabbos. If you tie the merdas onto the chamor on Shabbos, also lotzes by, then the chamor would not be allowed to go out with the merdas on Shabbos, because you weren't megaladas before Shabbos that this merdas is actually on the level of a malbush for the chamor. The text that we have here in the words of the Mechaber were kimin ukaf katan, that the merdas is like a small saddle. Ayin belavushe srod. Take a look at the lavushe srod. Says the Chavetz Chaim shetzarich loimer kimin ukaf gadol. Really, it should say over here kimin ukaf gadol, because as we're going to see, the merdas, the saddle cloth, was actually significantly larger than a saddle, not smaller. Now let's go back into the Mechaber. Says the Mechaber here on the bottom line, Ushar kol habehemois asurais. However, other types of animals other than a chamor are not allowed to go out with a merdas. Says the Chavetz Chaim Ushar, why not? Because other types of behemoths are not naturally cold. They're not going to suffer from the cold the way a chamor would, and therefore v'hevi hamardas masui. So for those animals, the merdas is not a malbush, it is a masui, it's a burden, and therefore the animal cannot go out with it on Shabbos. Says the Mechaber weiter, an animal is not allowed to go out bearing a saddle. Even if the saddle was on the behemoth from Erev Shabbos, you're not allowed to allow the behemoth to go out to Rishus Harabim with the saddle. Says the Mishnah Berurah, why not? The ukaf does not benefit the behemoth in any way. It doesn't keep it warm. It doesn't make it more comfortable. So the ukaf, the saddle, is not a beged for the animal. The dafka merdas moil shuhu munach al kol haguf. The merdas, the very large saddle cloth, that's something that covers up the entire guf of the chamor. It's draped over the whole body of the chamor, so therefore it will keep the chamor warm. Mashe einken ukaf, but the saddle ein mechamem ela b'makom shemunach. Even if the saddle is going to provide some warmth to the chamor, or to whatever animal you put it on, it's only going to benefit the animal in the small area that's covered by the saddle. It's not going to cover the animal as a whole. Okay, moving along, top line, Tzadikei and Beis, Sifches, says the Mechaber. So, we've spoken about the merdas on the chamor, and we're saying if the merdas was on the chamor from Erev Shabbos, then the chamor could go out with the merdas on Shabbos, because we realize that it's a malbush for the chamor. If it was not on the chamor from Erev Shabbos, so now you want to put it on the chamor and allow the chamor to go out with it on Shabbos, that you can't do. Now, how about to just put the merdas on the chamor? Are you allowed to put a merdas on a chamor, not in Rishus Harabim, in your chutzner? You have a corral, the corral, you have a big chutzner, the chutzner has a fence around it, so it's me'ureves. If it needs an eruve chatzeros, you made an eruve chatzeros. Now you want to know, are you just allowed to take a merdas and drape it over your chamor on Shabbos? Now this is not a shiloh of Hoitzah. What's the shiloh over here? The shiloh over here is a shiloh of Terchi Yisera. Shabbos is Yom Menucha. We don't do Terchi Yisera on Shabbos. We don't do extra work on Shabbos. Now, to go work with your animals, to go take a merdas and drape it over an animal on Shabbos, maybe that's a Terchi Yisera. That's the shiloh over here. Says the Mechaber, Mutter liteid mardas ala chamor mipnei hatzina. You're allowed to put the merdas on the chamor on Shabbos because of the cold. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Chav Tes, Mutter Litein Mardas, Hainu Shaloi Lotzeis L'Rishos Harabim. Obviously, you're not putting the Mardas on the Chamor to then allow the Chamor to go out to Rishos Harabim, right? Because you're not allowed to do that. You're only allowed to allow the Chamor to go out to Rishos Harabim if the Mardas was already on the animal from before Shabbos. Here we're discussing putting the Mardas on the Chamor on Shabbos. So says the Mishnah Berurah, Hainu Shaloi Lotzeis L'Rishos Harabim. Obviously, you want to put the Mardas on the Chamor, and you understand that then you're not allowed to let the Chamor go out to Rishos Harabim. Ki im sheyeh b'chotzer. What you're trying to do is, you just want to put the Mardas on the Chamor in your chotzer. You don't want to allow it to go out to Rishos Harabim. The shaila is, are you allowed to or not? Said the Mechaber, yes, you are. Why? Mipnei hatzina. Ois katan lamed, hainu. To be shum zeh lo chashinu l'tercha de Shabbos. What the Mechaber is saying is like this. Really, there's a good shaila here. To go put a Mardas on a Chamor on Shabbos, that's not very Shabbosdik. It seems to be a Tercha Yisera. But since the animal is suffering from the cold, you're allowed to go ahead and put the Mardas on the Chamor to protect it and make it more comfortable, even though, really, it's a Tercha Yisera. But we're allowing you to do it mipnei hatzina. Continues the Mechaber on the top line, Ubavad shelo yiksherenu bai. However, you could drape the Mardas on top of the Chamor, but you're not allowed to tie the Mardas onto the animal. Why, says the Mechaber? Mipnei shekisha kosher, because if you're going to tie the Mardas onto the Chamor, tzarich li karev elov. You're going to have to bring yourself very close to the animal. When you're tying the Mardas onto the animal, you're working in very close quarters to the body of the animal, and says the Mechaber, that's a problem, because v'nimtza mishtamish b'balei chayim, it's very likely that by working in such close quarters to the Chamor, you might come to lean on the Chamor. That would be a problem of being mishtamish b'balei chai. You're making use of a living animal on Shabbos, and that is an Isser D'Rabbanan. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Lamed Aleph. So the Mechaber said, Shelo yiksherenu. You're not allowed to tie it on. And why aren't you allowed to tie it on? Because of the din d'Rabbanan that you're not allowed to be mishtamish b'balei chai. Now, right away, someone's going to have an obvious question. If we're talking about tying a Mardas onto a Chamor, l'chari, there's another reason why you can't do it on Shabbos, and that is the Isser Malacha of kosher, of making knots. You're not allowed to tie things on Shabbos. So explains the Mishnah Berurah, when the Mechaber is telling me the halacha that you're not allowed to tie the Mardas on, the chiddush is even if you're not using a permanent knot, even if you're using a knot that's very easily going to come out, so that's mutter on Shabbos, still you're not allowed to do it here because of the Yisur D'Rabbanan of being mishtamish with a balchai. Says the Mechaber weiter, second line down, middle of the line. So that was on a Chamor. Aval al hasus. How about to put a Mardas, to drape a Mardas over a horse? We were talking about a Chamor. So he said by a Chamor you could do it in order to prevent the suffering of the Chamor from the cold. Aval al hasus. But to put a Mardas on a horse, came into less like tzartzina, since by nature a horse does not suffer from the cold, Asur litin alav Mardas klal. You're not allowed to put a Mardas on a horse on Shabbos at all. Whether you're going to allow it to go out to Rishos Harabim and there's a shaila of Hitzah or not, you're not allowed to drape a Mardas on a horse on Shabbos. Why? Because of Tercha Yisera. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Lamed Beis, Asur litein alav. You're not allowed to put the Mardas on the horse. Mishum devet tercha shaloi l'tzorich. Because this would be a tercha that doesn't have a tzorich. It's not Shabbosdik. There's no reason to do this tercha on Shabbos. Continues the Mishnah Berurah. V'ayin b'Biur HaGra shekosav. The Chavetz Chaim tells us to look at the Biur HaGra, who writes, Deladas Rashi, that in the opinion of Rashi, Gam al hasus v'chein l'chol habehemos mutter litein Mardas b'chotzer. The Biur HaGra says that this Mechaber is going shaloi kishitas Rashi. According to Shitas Rashi, the same way you're allowed to put a Mardas on a Chamor, if it's going to stay in the chotzer, you're allowed to put a Mardas on a horse or any other animal if it's going to stay in the chotzer. The gam lohem yesh tzartzina umoyalachimum, because Rashi says no. Rashi says even a horse and other animals, they also suffer from the cold, and they're also going to benefit from the mardas, and therefore we're going to allow the tircha, and we're going to allow you to put a mardas on a horse or another animal, according to the Gra, according to Rashi. V'chol zeh b'stama, avo b'shosha kar gadol. And again, we've seen this already yesterday. Points out the Chavetz Chaim that, remember, the rules that we're setting in stone over here, these are not hard, fast rules. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Aval b'shosha kar gadol, if there's an Arctic blast, right, and it's freezing cold outside, v'anu royin shamazik losus, and we see that a horse is suffering from the cold, v'chein b'yamayis hachama shazvuvim rabim u'mitzarim lasus, or if it's during the summer months, and there's a zillion flies buzzing around the horse, and we see that the horse is suffering, everybody would agree you're allowed to cover the horse with a mardas or any other kind of beged. It's no worse than a chamor. As long as we make sure that we don't run afoul of the din d'Rabbanan of being mishtamish with a Baal Chai. So what the Mishnah Berurah just said is like this. The Mishnah Berurah is telling you, look, the Mechaber is telling me over here that a chamor you're allowed to put a mardas on. Why? Because a chamor suffers from the cold. So even though putting a mardas on an animal seems to be an inappropriate level of tercha on Shabbos, in order to spare the chamor the suffering of the cold, you're allowed to do it. A horse doesn't suffer from the cold. Says the Mechaber, a horse, you're not allowed to do it. Says the Mishnah Berurah, but what if the horse is suffering? What if there's an Arctic blast and it's 10 below outside, and you see that the horse is suffering? Then the horse is no less than a chamor. The same way you're allowed to put a mardas on a chamor to stop the chamor from suffering, you're allowed to put a mardas on a horse if you see that a horse is suffering and you want to stop it from suffering. Same thing if a horse is suffering from an attack of flies. If there's a zillion flies driving the horse crazy and you see the horse is crazy, you're allowed to cover up the horse, and it's not an inappropriate level of tercha on Shabbos. So what is the rule? The rule is very simple. Like this, putting a beged or putting a mardas on an animal is called an inappropriate tercha on Shabbos. But if it's being done to prevent the animal from suffering, then it's okay. Says the Mechaber weiter. 3 lines down, middle of the line. Ula hosir mardas b'Shabbos. So until now, we've been discussing putting a mardas on an animal on Shabbos. How about to remove a mardas from an animal? Is that problematic? Says the Mechaber, lahasir mardas b'Shabbos, to remove a mardas on Shabbos. Bein min a chamor, whether you're taking it off of a chamor, or bein min a sus, or you're taking it off of a sus, aser. That's an inappropriate level of tercha on Shabbos, and you're not allowed to do that on Shabbos. Came to less leitzarim lo yisirena, because the nature of an animal is it's not going to suffer if you leave the mardas on. Therefore, you're not allowed to take it off. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Kat Lam Gimel, or Lahasir Mardas, Devatircha Shaloi L'Tzarech, Va'afilu Him Kfar Nischamema Al Yidei Masui Shenosam Im Oidyaim. And says the Mishnah Berurah, this is even true if the animal already got heated up because it did work. So let's say you had the animal was busy working on Erev Shabbos. So on Erev Shabbos, very close to Shabbos, the animal was working and the animal got all heated up. And the animal has a mardas. Now Shabbos starts. Okay, now it's already Shabbos. You want to go take the mardas off of the animal. Now in this case, the animal was heated up from work. Says the Mishnah Berurah, you're still not allowed to take the mardas off the animal because the nature of the animal is that it will not suffer from the presence of the mardas. Oiskat Lamadalid, the Mechaber made the point that this halacha applies both to a chamor and to a sus. Explains the Mishnah Berurah, Ayin B'Bir Halacha. He says, take a look at the Bir Halacha. So if you take a look at the Bir Halacha Dibur HaMaschil, Ulahasir Mardas B'Shabbos Ubein Min Asus, says the Chavetz Chaim, HaMechaber Sasa Bazek Kedas HaSmag. The Mechaber is following the opinion of the Smag. V'ayin B'Bir HaGra, but take a look at the Gra Shekosav. The Gra takes issue with the Smag. And the Gra says, the Das Rashi, it's the opinion of Rashi, the Min Asus, V'cheinu Adin Mikol HaBehemois. If you want to remove a mardas from a horse or from another animal, mutter lahasir hamardas v'cheinu ukaf. You're allowed to remove a mardas or a saddle from a horse or another animal on Shabbos. V'dafka min a chamor. It's only from a chamor that you're not allowed to. Why? The islay kriris b'yoser, because the chamor is a cold animal. V'yitztanen memela afilum loy naser me'elav. Masha'enken b'sharei habehemos. So what we're saying is like this. The Mechaber said, you want to remove a mardas from an animal on Shabbos? You're not allowed to. Doesn't matter what kind of animal. Whether it's a chamor, whether it's a sus, to take the mardas off, you're not allowed to do. Why? Because the animal is not going to suffer from the heat of the mardas. Said the Mishnah Berurah, that's true even if the animal was heated up from doing work. You're still not allowed to take the mardas off. Says the Bir Halacha, this is the opinion of the Smag. But the Gra makes a chilek here. The Gra says, from a chamor, you're not allowed to take the mardas off. Why? Because like we said, a chamor by nature is a cold animal. So we don't have to worry about the chamor suffering from the heat. The chamor will not suffer from the heat. And even if the chamor did work before Shabbos and it's already heated up, it's going to cool itself down very quickly, and therefore we cannot take off the mardas because that would be an inappropriate tercha. But a horse or another animal, they're not by nature cold animals. They will suffer from the heat. And therefore the Gra says that, at least according to Rashi, a horse or other animals, you are allowed to take off the mardas or the saddle. Okay, going weiter here, 4 lines down, middle of the line, says the Mechuber, V'ukaf aser bein litar bein lahaniach. A saddle, you're not allowed to put on an animal, you're not allowed to take it off an animal. Bein lechamor, whether you're dealing with a donkey. Bein lasus, whether you're dealing with a horse. An ukaf, a saddle, you're not allowed to put it on Shabbos, you're not allowed to take it off on Shabbos. Doesn't matter what kind of animal. Says the Mishnah Berurah, hey, beit litar hatam kanal le'inyan mardas. The reason is because it's an inappropriate tercha on Shabbos. And when the Mechaber says you're not allowed to put the ukaf on the animal, either way, it's a tercha shaloi l'tzarech. Even if you're dealing with a chamor, like we said earlier at the beginning of this year, to put a saddle on a chamor on Shabbos, it's not going to give it enough warmth. It's not going to help the chamor. So it's an inappropriate level of tercha. To take it off, the animals don't need you to take the ukaf off on Shabbos. They'll cool down by themselves. Moving along to Sif Tes, 4 lines down, end of the line. So this is it's just funny the way this Sif begins. The Mechaber just told us at the end of Sif Ches, you're not allowed to put a saddle on an animal, you're not allowed to take a saddle off an animal. Says the Mechaber Sif Tes, Ukav shal gabi achamor sheba min haderech. Let's say you have guests coming for Shabbos, and they rode in on Erev Shabbos, 10 minutes before Licht, they rode in on a chamor, and they came from a long trip. So the chamor just been traveling a long distance, and the chamor has a saddle on it. Ukav shal gabi achamor sheba min haderech. A saddle that's on a donkey that just came from a journey. V'nisyageya, and the chamor is tired. V'tzarich la'asiroi litzaninoi, and you feel that you need to take the saddle off in order to cool the chamor down. Now, we said you're not allowed to do that. In Sif Ches, we just said, a saddle, you're not allowed to take it off, you're not allowed to put it on. But this is kind of like an extenuating circumstance. The animal just arrived from a long journey, and you feel like the chamor needs you to take it off. Says the Mechaber, I'll give you an eitzah. Lo yitlenu b'yadai. You're not allowed to go with your hands and take the saddle off, because I just told you in Sif Ches, you're not allowed to do that. It's an inappropriate level of tercha on Shabbos. But what could you do, says the Mechaber? Ella, ma terachevel mitachtov, untie the rope from underneath the animal. There's a rope coming down from the saddle, going down under the animal. Untie the rope under the animal. So now the saddle is going to be loose. Umelichai umeviyoi b'chatzer. And now lead the chamor around in the corral. Let him walk back and forth and back and forth. And the untied saddle will fall off. So the Mechaber is giving you an eitzah. I told you in Sif Ches you're not allowed to take the saddle off. You feel like you need to take the saddle off to help the animal. The animal's exhausted from the trip, and it doesn't want the saddle on. Okay, untie it, lead the animal back and forth, let it walk around, the saddle will fall off. Says the Mishnah Berurah, even though the chamor will appreciate the fact that you took it off, he's going to be a very happy donkey. The animal's not suffering. If the animal was suffering from the chamor, then you would be allowed to take it off. But the animal's not suffering. The animal will be happier if you take it off. That's not enough for us to be mad to you to take it off. Now really, we learned this halacha already in Sif Ches, that you're not allowed to take it off. The Mechaber only repeats it here in Sif Tes, because at the end of Sif Tes, he's going to give you an eitzah of what you should do. Moving along to Sif Yud. Ein toilin lechamar traskel. You're not allowed to hang a feed basket on a donkey. Pirush, what is this traskel? Kli shel arava kalufa. It was some kind of wicker basket that was made out of peeled willow branches. Umechusa ba'oir, and it was covered in leather. I guess the leather was there as a padding so it shouldn't abrade the neck of the animal, because you're hanging it from the neck of the animal. Ein toilin lechamar traskel. You're not allowed to hang this feed basket on the neck of the chamar, b'tzavarai, litein Michael b'seicha sheyochel misham, in order to put feed into it and allow the chamar to eat. You're not allowed to do this. Says the Mishnah Berurah, b'tzavarai, t'cham midoi she'ene el l'tarnig abehema, have a tircha shaloi l'tzarech v'aser. Again, the animal, this is not doing something to prevent the animal from suffering. It's going to give the animal Oinik Shabbos, right? It's going to get a nice fresh basket of feed, so it's going to appreciate it. But you're not allowed to do something that an animal is going to appreciate on Shabbos. So it's a Tirchi Yisera on Shabbos, you're not allowed to do it. Says the Mechaber Vayter, Aval, however, Agolim, young calves, Usyachim, young foals, so a young horse, a young donkey, a young camel. Oh, I think those are all called tsiachim. Shetzavaron katan, who still have very short necks, and therefore it's hard for them to reach the ground. Umitztarim lechal al gabe karka, if they have to eat off the ground, they're going to suffer. A full-grown chamor is not going to suffer if he has to eat off the ground. Therefore, you're not allowed to hang a basket from his neck. It's a terchi yisera. But agolim and tsiachim will suffer if they have to eat off the ground. So therefore, by them, shari b'chotzer, you're allowed to hang this feed basket on the neck of the calf or the foal, but you're not allowed to allow the animal to go out to Rishus HaRabim with the feed basket, because the feed basket would be a masui, it would be a burden. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois cotton lamed ches ein yoitzin afilu mayatali aleim ba'ayim deva masui. Even if you put the feed basket on the neck of the animal on Erev Shabbos, you're still not allowed to let it go out on Shabbos to Rishus HaRabim. This is different than what we learned at the beginning of this year with the merdas. On merdas, if the merdas was on the chamor on Erev Shabbos, so now the chamor could go out to Rishus HaRabim with the merdas on Shabbos. Why? Because the fact that the merdas was on the back of the chamor on Erev Shabbos shows that it's there to keep him warm, so it's a malbush and it's not a masui. The feed basket is a masui. I don't care when the feed basket went on. The feed basket is not a beged. The feed basket is a masui. And therefore, the animal is not allowed to go out with the feed basket, even if it was hanging on his neck on Shabbos. Moving along to Sif Yud Aleph, says the Mechaber. La yetze asus biznav shual shetalim be'enav shaloi tishlet by ayin hara. Who would have known? You're not a horse. You can't allow your horse to go out to Rishus HaRabim with a fox's tail hanging between its eyes. Now, why would you have a fox's tail hanging between the eyes of your horse? Apparently, this was done to ward off ayin hara. You're also not allowed to allow your horse to go out to Rishus HaRabim with a roita bindle, a red strip of some kind of cloth that was there to prettify the horse. V'loi izim b'kis shebedadehem. And goats, female goats, cannot go out with a pouch over their udder, shekoishrim oisam, which is tied onto the udder of the goat, shalo yisru tu dadeim bekoitzim, so that their hanging udders should not become abraded by thorns. Now, we learned this already yesterday. The reason for this is, it sounds perfectly reasonable, right? Why not? Why can't you do this? This sounds like a bona fide beged. This is something that's on the goat to protect the body of the goat. It's to protect the udder from becoming abraded. Why is this usher? The answer is because this is a goat that you still want to produce milk. Therefore, you're not going to tie the pouch on tightly. It's going to be loose. Since it's loose, we have to be worried that if it goes out to Rishus Harabim with that pouch, the pouch might fall off, and then the owner of the goat might pick it up and carry it to Rishus Harabim. So far, the horse can't go out with the fox's tail to prevent ayin hara. He can't go out with the red strip that's like a takshit. He can't go out with these things because they don't do anything for the goof of the animal. Very nice that your animal is becoming prettified, but it doesn't do anything for the animal. It's considered a masui. Okay. Continues the Mechaber. V'loi para b'chasoim shebepia. A cow cannot go out with the muzzle. The muzzle doesn't do anything for the animal. It's not a beged for the animal. Shechais bepia shaloi tira b'stais acherim. That muzzle is there to prevent it from grazing in other people's fields. It doesn't benefit the animal. V'loi kol behema b'sandal shenayel imbarak. Now, by the way, some of you might ask, but I don't understand, Rabbi Weiss. Didn't you tell us yesterday that the standard for something to become a beged for a behema is if it benefits the owner? Yeah, but it has to benefit the owner in the way of a beged. So the case that we had yesterday was a sheep could go out with a sweater to protect the wool from getting dirty. That is a function of a beged. Now, it's not a beged really for the animal because the animal doesn't care if its wool gets dirty. It's not protecting the animal from harm. The sheep doesn't become harmed if its wool gets dirty, but it's benefiting the owner in the method of a garment, right? That's what a garment does. It protects. Over here, the fox's tail is not benefiting the owner, right? The owner doesn't want the animal to get an ayin hara, but the fox's tail is not benefiting anybody in the way of a garment. That's what's going on over here. So too the muzzle. The muzzle is not benefiting the owner in the way that a garment usually benefits. Saloi para b'chasaim shebepia, shechais b'pia shaliter b'stais acherim. V'loi kol behema b'sandal shenaylim b'ragleh shaloi tinagef. An animal can't go out with some kind of a boot or a shoe that's on the foot of the animal so that it shouldn't get injured. Aval yoytza be'eged shal gabe maka, but it could go out with a bandage on a wound, or bekashkashim shal gabe hashever, or splints that are placed on a break. These are boards shekoshim lem savava etzam anishba behen, that are bound around a broken bone, ubeshilya sheyatza b'ktsasa utuluyaba, or a placenta that's hanging out of a female animal and is still attached. If the animal is wearing a bell, you could stuff it up so that the clapper can't move and the bell can't ring, and you could let it walk around. But the animal cannot go out to Rishus Harabim wearing a bell, even if the bell is stuffed up, whether the bell is affixed to the neck of the animal or it's affixed to some kind of a garment on the animal. Okay, we said a mouthful here. It says the Mishnah Berurah Katlabetes, Biznav Shul, with the fox. The horse can't go out with the fox's tail that wards off an ayin hara. B'chol elu atam. The reason for all of these rulings is none of these items protect the body of the animal, therefore they all constitute a burden. With the exception of the boot that goes on the foot of the behema, right? That does protect the foot of the animal. So why is that usher? Explains the Mishnah Berurah, the reason the animal cannot go out with a boot is because we're afraid the boot's going to fall off and the owner will come to carry it. But it is a beged for the animal. So too, the pouch on the udder of the goat, that's also a beged. What's wrong with that? The reason it can't go out is like we explained yesterday, because it's loose. We're talking about a loose pouch. That's where we explained that the pouch is loose because you want the goat to continue producing milk. The animal can't go out with the boot. However, a horse is allowed to go out with horseshoes. When we say an animal can't go out with a boot, that's a boot. A horseshoe, an animal's allowed to go out with. Because it's nailed on. We're not going to be chayshish that it might fall off and you might come to carry it. Ois cotton membes, upoikek. The Mechaber said an interesting halacha. The Mechaber said if an animal is wearing a bell, you could stuff up the bell so that the bell can't ring, and then the animal could go out with it. Says the Mishnah Berurah cotton membes. You're stuffing up the bell so the clapper cannot move. You're stuffing it up either with wool or with rags. The ilavhachi, if you don't stop it up, also bishum demashmiya koil. One of the halachas that we're going to see all the way at the end of Chelik Gimel is the Issa D'Rabbanan of Hashmas Koil. You're not allowed to do things that make musical sounds, or you're not allowed to use a musical instrument even if it's making noise. This bell is a keli that's made to make noise. So you're not allowed to have the animal walk around ringing the bell. Ois kat mem gimel, loy seitze. So the Mechaber said like this. The Mechaber said, if you stuff up the bell, then the animal could go in the chutzner. But the animal cannot go to Rishus Harabim even if the bell is stuffed up. Now, based on everything that we've learned until now, it would be perfectly understandable if you jumped to conclusions and you said, yeah, well, the animal can't go out with the bell even to Rishus Harabim, even if the bell is stuffed up, because l'chayra the bell is a masui. So the animal can't go out to Rishus Harabim carrying a masui. That's not what the Mishnah Berurah says. Says the Mishnah Berurah, you know why the animal can't go out to Rishus Harabim with the bell, even if the bell is stuffed up? Very interesting reason. Mishum demerzi k'moilikai bashuk limkar. Because the Gemara says in Shabbos, the Dalan and Beis, a new problem. When an animal goes out with a bell, it looks like you're taking the animal to the marketplace to sell it. Because when they took animals to the marketplace to sell them, they put bells on them. So you know what it looks like? It looks like you're conducting business on Shabbos. Why is your animal going out to Rishus Harabim with a bell? Looks like you're going to market. So it looks like you're conducting business at Shabbos. So Issa D'Rabbanan, Marasayin, you're not allowed to go out with the animal with a bell. How about a masui? So different achrayim deal with this in different ways. One of the things that they say is we must be talking about where the bell is fastened to the animal's halter or to some other beged that the animal's wearing that it's allowed to wear, maybe a merdas, and therefore the bell is buckled to the beged, and therefore it's not a masui. Animals that don't have this gzera, for instance, chatulim, cats, no one thinks you're taking your cat to the market to sell it. V'oifos of birds, it would be mutter. Smag is taka worried about a masui. So he says even a cat can't go out with a bell. You're right, there's no problem that it looks like you're taking it to market, but there's a problem with it being a masui. Who deal with this question of the bell being a masui in greater detail. Vedan, you should know, says the Mishnah Berurah. He tells us here a couple of rules. Any item that we say an animal is not allowed to go out with to Rishus Harabim because we consider that item to be a masui for the animal, b'chotzer shari. The animal would be allowed to go out with that item into the chotzer, va'afilu einam ureves, even if it's a chotzer that does not have a proper iruve chatzeris. Now remember, it's still a chotzer that's walled in. So midaraisa, it's a rishus hayachid, but it's not mu'ureves. You didn't make it iruve chatzeris. So midarabanan, you're not allowed to carry there. But these halachas where we say that an animal can't go out to Rishus Harabim because what it's wearing constitutes a masui, and therefore it's a problem of shvisas behemtai, but to go to a chotzer she'ena mu'ureves, that would be mutter. Olini karmelis, how about for the animal to go out to a karmelis? Yesh deus bein achrayim, yesh batira v'yesh oisrim. Olini Rishus Harabim shalanu, how about our Rishus Harabims nowadays, which according to many are not really bona fide Rishus Harabims, they're really a karmelis. Bevada yesh lizayr, we should be careful, we should be machmir. The yesh bazeh suffik is a Torah. Kamay should be ayte bibir halacha. U'bedavar shachshashu b'shav dilma nafal v'asi ba'olav la'asuye. Things that we say the animal's not allowed to go out to Rishus Harabim because we're afraid that it might fall off and the owner might come to carry it. So let's say an animal with a boot, right? The boot of the animal is a beged. So really, there's no reason that the animal can't go out with it. But there's a chashash d'Rabbanan, it might fall off, you might come carry it. But that chashash is on the person. We're afraid the person might pick it up and carry it. So then, even those that say that the animal is allowed to go out to a karmelis, but these items, the animal wouldn't be allowed to go out with even to a karmelis because we're afraid it might fall off and the person might come to carry it in a karmelis, and therefore we zicha would have an issa d'Rabbanan. When things that were worried, like the animal with the bell, which is a problem of marasayin, that it looks like you're going to conduct business on Shabbos, that would be usher even in a mavui that has a proper shitufei mevuos. You still won't be allowed to do it because this is not a hitzah issue. Kevin deshchichi sham rabim, since there are a lot of people there, there's a marasayin problem. Kein kasu bagan avram, v'arpri megadim, v'chein abeis beir, mefakfikin bedin zeh. Ois kat mem dalid. The Mechaber said the animal can't go out with the bell to Rishus Harabim, even if the bell is stopped up, and we said probably because of this problem of marasayin, it looks like you're conducting business. And the Mechaber said this is true, whether the bell is affixed to the neck of the animal or it's affixed to the animal's garment. Says the Mishnah Berurah b'ksusa, oisal osusa me'ilim shelo yitanfu. What kind of garment are we talking about? Says the Mishnah Berurah that the horses would have some kind of a me'il, some kind of a beged that would cover them so that they shouldn't get dirty. Okay, thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. Exclusive limud HaTorah should be Megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rosh Hashanah should send Yeshua's reference Parnasset Shaduchim to those in need. We should be zeicher to see the Bias Gal Tzedek B'Meher V'Yameinu Amen. Be well.